Hello everybody, this is Shane with Starnes Woodworking, and today I'm going to show you how I made this butcher block kitchen island countertop fully equipped with drawers and cabinets. Let's get right into the video. So to start this project off, I did some rough sketches on Autocad just to make sure my dimensions were right and all my pieces would go together. Also, lumber prices are super high right now, so I made sure to lay out my backs and parts to make sure I could fit it all in one piece of plywood. Anyways, all my plywood pieces are pre-cut into all the shapes and dimensions that I need them to. So here I'm using my router with a 3/4 inch straight bit to make some dados to receive the shelves. Now I could have actually completed this on the table saw, but I don't actually have a dado stack that would work for this, so I just opted for the router, and honestly it worked just as well. And really the only technique that I'm using here is just clamping down a straight edge and making sure to keep my router edge tight against that board. So once I have all my dados cut, hopefully everything will fit together like a puzzle piece. I'm going to cross my fingers for that. I'm going to get my brad nailer out. We're going to be assembling the shelves and putting the back on, and we're going to go from there. So my assembly process for these pieces actually went really smooth. I dry fitted everything before I put glue and nails in there just to make sure it would fit, because that is obviously the smart thing to do. And once you have nails and glue in there, you're probably not going to get it out. And if you do, it's going to be a mess. So here I'm just using my detail mallet and a rough scrap piece of wood to get those shelves and hit them home to where they belong. And I actually opted to use some clamps on each part of the shelf just to make sure as the glue dries, they stay together tightly and don't leave any cracks behind. So after that, I'm taking my back panel and sliding that down right through the dado grooves. And let me tell you, this part was super satisfying to see it all fit together like this. So here I am milling up some hard maple lumber to 3/4 inch thick for my face frame for the front of my cabinet. And the reason I chose maple here is because it is a hard and dent resistant wood, so it makes for a great fit. So once I have all of my 1.5 inch pieces cut out, I'm going to take them over to the miter saw, cut them all to the length I want to do, and before that, actually, I'm going to install a piece of plywood here that runs from edge to edge just to give this a little bit more strength. And then after that, I'm going to assemble the face frame, and I'm going to be using pocket screws. And then we're going to slap that sucker on here with the brad nails and a little bit of glue. So this is actually my first time using pocket screws in a project like this, and let me tell you, they worked wonders and really saved me some time, especially in assembling my face frame. And what's great about them is they can be hidden and they will never be seen, but yet still create a super strong and tight joint. Here I'm just getting all my pocket holes drilled, and I opted for 2 on each board just to give added strength and resistance. And I'm just taking my time here, making sure all my measurements are right, because I really don't want to mess this part up when I go to line it up with my cabinet. And as you can see, it fits perfectly, and you can see my sigh of relief there. So next, after this step, I have some more hard maple lumber milled up, and this will actually be for my stiles and rails for my false front and cabinet doors. And again, this is a great wood because it's dent resistant and it is nice hard wood. So I'm cutting these down to size and using a 45-degree miter for my joints here. And as you can see, they almost look like a little picture frame here. Then I'm headed over to my router table with a 1/8 inch straight bit to create a home for my plywood piece that will act as the cabinet door. I will be doing 2 total passes, moving the fence back just a little bit so it can receive the 1/4 inch plywood and create a perfect tight fit. And once I have all my grooves cut out on my stiles and rails, I'm back over to the table saw with my plywood to cut down my false front plywood pieces and cabinet plywood pieces to the size that I need. Now time to glue these suckers up, and I'm just putting a little bit of glue and rubbing it in with my finger on the miters, not too much in the groove to prevent squeeze out and having to sand that later. And I'm just using some squeeze clamps here to create the clamping pressure that I need, and they actually ended up working out perfectly. Back over to the router again with a change of bit, and I'm using a Roman OG here to really spice up the drawers, and I really am happy with how this profile turned out. It gave it a great look. Now to match the profile I gave on the outer edge, I'm using some little pieces of trim on the inner edge here to really match it and give it a professional look. After putting the final touches on the frost front and cabinet doors, I'm now trying to install my cabinet hinges here. And I opted for a hidden hinge, which really gave it a great look. This was my first time using these hinges on a cabinet door, and I know they make jigs for these, which really would have came in handy, but I did find out that you definitely don't need it in order to install these. Boom, and just like that, my cabinet doors are on and they fit perfectly. So now I'm over to start on my drawers, and I have this pre-surfaced piece of maple here that I'm using, but I had to plane that down to 1/2 inch because I think that is the optimal drawer thickness. Here I'm over to the table saw and ripping these pieces down into 4.5 inches for my drawer height. Once I have my pieces laid out to my likings, I'm heading over to the table saw and basically doing the same process that I did for my mitered stiles and rails. And the reason I opted for the table saw this time is these pieces were a lot more manageable to use on the table saw compared to those thin little dangerous pieces that it would have had to ran anyways. Again, I'm using pocket holes for my drawer attachments here, and if you do them right, nobody will ever see them, which is what makes them so great. So if you put them in the front and the back of the drawer, they will be completely hidden from sight once you put the false front on there. Once I have the first half of my drawer slides installed on my drawers, I've cut some strips of plywood here in order to give me a surface to mount the other side of the drawer slides. And just like that, once I get the other side of my drawer slides mounted, they fit perfectly. A big sigh of relief there again. Now I'm measuring out dimensions for my false fronts to make sure I can get them to fit equally and have even gaps the whole way around. Something here that was kind of my own personal touch is I just wanted to add some trim around the bottom side just to give it that extra little detail. And this is really just painted MDF, and it doesn't have to be painted, but this was the best design that I could find. And this whole cabinet is getting painted anyways, so you will never see the difference. And once this is all complete, it is time to move on to the finishing process. So here I'm just using some 5-minute epoxy to fill all the brad nail holes, and I'll go back later and sand them off. Here I'm using some polyurethane to finish up my drawers. I'll put 2 layers on each of the drawers. Now I'm going with a layer of primer on all my doors, false fronts, and sides of the cabinet. Then I go back with another white layer of actual paint. So there'll be 2 layers on total. Once I let the paint dry, I gave it a nice light sanding, then installed my drawer pulls and cabinet handles and reinstalled the drawers and cabinet doors. So finally I got 2 layers of paint on the entire base. I reassembled the doors and the drawers, put them back on and made sure they fit again, which they did. I finished the butcher block top up, which I'm actually going to show you how I made in a previous video that I already posted. But anyways, right now I just have this sitting on top, so I'm going to make some framework in order to fully attach this to the base. And after that's complete, it will finally be fully finished. Alright, so that wraps up this project. I really appreciate everyone for staying and watching this video. This project, I definitely learned a lot, and I hope you guys all did too from watching me document my experience. Again, thank you so much for watching. Consider liking and subscribing.